All right, so I just have a couple things.
Yeah.
And then see what else you got there.
Okay.
Janikowski was asked to take a pay cut.
Who's that?
Janikowski.
Oh, yeah.
Lamar Jackson, can he win back-to-back Heismans like Archie Griffin did? I think that was 74, 75, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
College.
Well, it was actually, I think, wasn't it?
Or 73, 74. It was Archie.
Yeah, Archie Griffin. Yeah.
Yeah.
He never really made it in the pros. He was playing with Cleveland.
Yeah.
Or was it Cincinnati?
Cincinnati, and he didn't really
do much. Yeah. It's funny how some guys, they get out of college, they just don't hack it in the pros.
Yeah.
The other guys have mediocre college careers, have good college careers, but nothing great, and then they get in the pros. It's like,
yeah, they do really well.
Yeah. Just depends on the system. I think a lot of it is
Mm-hmm.
who's your coach, who your teammates are.
And the growth. Then there's a college transfer rule article. Just a couple other things.
Alrighty.
You have some stuff too?
Yeah, I'll come up with some things.
It goes fast.
Yeah.
All right.
They're always good.
Do you guys ever do Alcatraz? You ever done that?
Oh, yeah, I did that. Well, actually, I did it. I was on the very first tour because I was writing for this little newspaper in the city years ago, and I got to go on the very first tour. The very first tour was cool because we had to go everywhere, not just up to the prison yard and the block cell house, but everywhere, literally.
Has Molly ever done that?
Nah.
Because I've got these Alcatraz tickets.
I should like to do that.
Yeah, I've got the two and a two, so it's like maybe 3 of you and then add.
Yeah. Take a friend maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that'd be a good time to do it too in the fall with less people. I'd be interested.
Okay.
All right.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
All right. Let's do this here.
Let's do this. Let's start this puppy.
Okay, here we go. Welcome to Sports Econ 101, the show where we discuss sports topics from a business perspective. I'm your host, Edward Brown, along with my co-host, Bruce McGowan, longtime sports radio personality. Now, today we don't have any guests, but we got a lot of various articles to cover. I want to talk a little bit about Janikowski being asked to take a pay cut, Lamar Jackson, back-to-back Heisman potential. There was an article in Sports Illustrated about the case for changing the transfer rule that I'd like to go over. The Lions had revoked a season ticket holder due to an Instagram post against a black couple sitting down for the national anthem and using a racial slur. Did you hear about that?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so we'll get into that a little bit. Recently, and on Yahoo, it showed these 5 kids getting kicked off of their football team for posting a photo wearing white hoods and burning a cross and holding a Confederate flag.
Oh, boy.
Can you believe that? There were some very interesting comments on the Yahoo that I wanted to go over. I thought the people who wrote in made an interesting analysis of it. And then good old Colin Kaepernick. Do you think he's going to go to the Bengals?
He'll go somewhere, but I don't know where.
Okay, I want to talk
Bengals need some help.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's Andy Dalton's fault, but I think they're awful. I mean, they haven't scored a touchdown yet, have they?
I don't think
2
so.
games?
9 points in 2 games. That's pretty good.
That's like the 49ers,
Yeah.
How many touchdowns did the 49ers score? I don't think they have a touchdown either. They don't. They scored 12.
No, I think they
scored
really?
No, they scored 12 points. Yeah.
It's pathetic.
Their offense is bad.
All right. This segment of Sports Econ 101 is sponsored by Pacific Private Money, providing mortgage investments that are currently yielding over 7.5%. In fact, the last distribution was 8.4%.
Nice.
That
Nice.
doesn't get any more conservative than that. Check them out at pacificprivatemoney.com. This week's trivia theme is going to be football. So we'll have some more football questions for you. All right.
Sounds good.
Sounds pretty good. Okay, so don't go anywhere. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. When we come back, we're going to go over all these articles we were just talking about. All right.
Is your wedding ring on your left hand there?
You know what it is? It is
Interesting
my
ring.
great-grandfather's. About 100
cool is
something
that?
years old. I know. No one's ever seen
It
anything.
is a cool ring.
You know, the funny thing is that we thought that this was a fake sapphire because it turns out it's real.
Wow.
Because that
Your
was the
great-grandfather, huh?
Yeah.
So that's going back to the...
Yeah.
Yeah. Because my granddad was born in the 19th century.
Uh-huh. And he was
All my grandparents were born in the same year, 1888.
Really?
Yeah, all 4 of them.
Eva's grandfather was 1861.
Wow.
Mr. Grandfather. Yeah.
61. Born during the Civil War.
Can you imagine that? It's funny because when we were looking at wedding rings, this was the only one that was comfortable.
Huh.
So
you just had it, did you just have to have it adjusted for your finger?
No, it just
It
worked out perfectly, yeah. Because
how do they take a ring and adjust it? You know, how do they do that?
They cut it and then they add a little silver to make it bigger. Or
it's got to be a real art.
Yeah. So what's 23rd?
I saw Vernon at the A's game the Raiders game on Sunday. He's so funny. He brings this little stepping ladder kind of thing where you can stand on it so you can reach over everybody. Yeah.
Does he like his new place?
It's working out pretty well. Yeah.
It's funny. You ever watch the show Ballers?
I've seen it once or twice. Yeah.
Because they're taking on the Mark Davis moving the team to Las Vegas. Kind of interesting.
Yeah. That is bums.
All right, here we go. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Again, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. All right, so let's start off with Janikowski.
Now, for those that don't know, Sebastian Janikowski, one of the premier kickers in football, has been kicking since, I think, 2000. It might have been his first year when the Raiders went on a nice little run of 3 AFC title games in a row, went to the Super Bowl last year. But he has been hurt in the preseason, had not been able to kick. I don't think he kicked at all. And Giorgio Trevecchio from Cal, who had been a practice squad player for 5 years. Interesting guy. His parents are from Italy. Terrific college kicker, and he's just a model of persistence, has taken over and is perfect so far. He has tried 5 field goals, and he's kicked all 5 of them through, or maybe it's 6. He kicked 2 in his first game of 52 yards. So Sebastian may not get his job back.
Well,
this kid's and he's a left footer just like Sebastian. Great kid too.
Really? Okay.
Oh, he's not a kid. He's 27.
Yeah, I was gonna say
he's a rookie though. Yeah. But kickers last a long time because they don't get hit very often. And Sebastian Janikowski is one of those guys who looks like a football player. He weighs about 240, 250 pounds.
So is he gonna take the back seat then?
Well, if this kid continues, if this Trevecchio continues to kick well, I don't see how the Raiders. Janikowski has earned a chance to come back, but at the same time, if this young man is kicking in, every ball that is put down on the field through the uprights, how can you take away that job?
Especially when Janikowski scored toward the end of his career.
Yeah, he is. He wants a raise, though. I don't get that. I do get it. I just don't think he's going to get it.
Yeah.
Why should he?
Well, he apparently took a pay cut.
Yeah. So I know he's not happy with that. He wants more money. I think actually, in all fairness, athletes that put in that much time, I understand where they're coming from because it's a finite number of years, and if you're not a great player, he's a great player, but he's not. Kickers, even great kickers, don't make buku bucks. So hey,
doesn't he get a pension like any other company?
Oh, sure. The pensions are good in the NFL these days too, compared to what they were 30, 40 years ago. Yeah, definitely. I'm not sure what it is, but depending on what you made, you get paid pretty well. Yeah,
and they must put into the system.
So the NFL's got
free money. They got
they have a good pension. They don't have a great union. Their union is not nearly as strong as the NFL or the Major League Baseball or NBA or NHL.
Oh, why is that?
I think probably it's because they play fewer games. There are more players. The league owners are a lot more unified and tight-fisted, and it's just the way it is.
Tighter group.
Yeah, it is. The NFL owners just they work together well, and that's why they get things done. One thing that bothers me though about the NFL, Edward, is the fact that transfers of franchises. I don't think that's good for the league. You look at the number of teams. Now the Raiders are going to be moving a couple of years to Las Vegas. How can that be good for the league? How can that be good for anybody?
The only thing I could think of is instead of moving a team, you just invent a new.
Have an expansion team. Like Houston moves to where did Houston move to? Tennessee. Yeah. The Colts moved from Baltimore to Indianapolis. Baltimore's a great football town. Then the Cleveland Browns, they moved to Baltimore. It's just and the Raiders have moved now. This is going to be their 3rd move.
Yeah, well, that's a funny thing. Okay, so you have Baltimore moving to Indianapolis, and then the team moves to Baltimore.
Right. Well, because everybody knew that Baltimore was a great football town, although Cleveland is probably even a better football town, but Art Modell didn't get his stadium. See, this is another thing I have a real problem with is these owners, they expect municipalities and cities and surrounding counties to just cater to their needs, and they're only playing 10 times a year.
Well, they're not making enough money.
Yeah, right. Not making enough money. They make so much off the television revenue, it's ridiculous. So
I wonder how much they really make off that.
That's a good question. It was interesting, though. I was looking at the number of teams in the NFL that are worth over $2 billion. Actually, every team in the NFL is worth over $2 billion.
Even
the Buffalo Bills, they're the lowest. They're
lowest.
2.1 million. The Dallas Cowboys, I believe, are 4.8 million or billion.
What about the Buccaneers? I mean,
I'm not sure where the Buccaneers are. The Raiders are not in the top 10. They're like 19th. The 49ers are 5th. As bad as they are 5th.
Now, I wonder how they determine.
Yeah, it's a lot of a lot of it has to do with ownership, deep pockets, how much of the stadium they might own, payroll. I don't, radio rights. I'm not sure exactly how that works. It's a good question. Be interesting to look into it. But Dallas, I think a lot of it too is you sell a certain amount of Dallas Cowboys gear. Yeah, the league gets a certain amount of it, but the team gets a certain amount of it also.
Yeah. Well, Raiders always have had good success with selling their.
Oh
gear.
Yeah.
I think it's just a pirate thing.
Yeah, it's part of their cult mentality. I think ever since they've been to LA, they were actually more successful in Oakland in terms of on the field, but in LA, they became kind of a cult team in the 1980s. And now, moving to Las Vegas, I don't think is a good thing for their fans, but they'll still draw sellout crowds. So
yeah, well, I mean, Las Vegas, unless they're going to go to UNLV, who.
Yeah, it's interesting though. They're not going to move there till probably 2020. So that begs the question: how much fan loyalty will there be? I was at the game, the opener with the Jets this past weekend, and that place was sold out, and the place was going crazy. It was like the Raiders, they're here forever. I mean, Raider fans are different.
Well, partly I think this year too, they seem to have some promise.
Wow, they have a great, their defense is much better than it was going to be, and offensively. Marshawn Lynch, you got Derek Carr, one of the best quarterbacks in the game. You got an offensive line. You got 3 Pro Bowlers in an offensive line. That's the key to the.
And then how bad were the Jets? Or are the Jets?
Awful. I mean, the Raiders actually committed, I think, 7 or 8 penalties. Now, some of those were judgment calls, so they weren't bad mistakes, but they didn't play as well as they should have, but they still won convincingly, as they should have.
I wonder how a team deals with that when they kind of just know they're bad. Let's say the Jets, they know they're bad. They just, how do you? I guess at some point you kind of have to be selfish and go, listen, I know I'm not a bad team, but I got to play really well, just keep my job.
I think all players have to feel that way, and I think if you go into, a game or you're with a team and you have that mentality, we're a bad team, you're not going to win. You're not going to have a chance to win. So you have to have this feeling that, yeah, we know that the odds are against us, but we have just as good a chance as anybody to win on this day. And that's what you have to do. Pro athletes are like anybody else. They have their ups and downs, and they have their confidence and their, times when they begin to doubt themselves. But I think, generally speaking, you're not going to make it to that level if you don't have confidence. So,
and then in college, I think there's a different kind of pride.
Yeah.
Like for your school, because what was it, Howard?
Howard University.
Yeah. They were the underdog, and who did they beat? Was it UNLV?
Yeah, they beat somebody pretty good.
Some pretty good team, and they beat them handily.
Yeah, well, Howard University has produced a lot of pro athletes. That's not a powerhouse university, but it's turned out a lot of good pro players. A lot of good NFL players.
Where is that?
It's down south somewhere. I think it's in the Atlanta area, I believe.
Okay. That's the thing. They got to have these names on. Like again, we know Stanford because it's in California, but how many people? Well, of course, California has kind of a name, but like. Clemson.
Well,
how many people know it's in South Carolina?
Yeah, I mean Morris Brown University, where my friend George Atkinson, who played with the Raiders back in the '70s, went. I asked him, I said, "Where in the world is it?" It's in suburban Atlanta.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
I figured some. I was gonna say Mississippi.
George is from the South. He liked playing in the South. So
where's Ole Miss from?
Yeah, really. Where is Ole Miss from? Yeah, that's a great.
Get that one there.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see. When we come back, first of all, we're going to ask a trivia question. When we come back, want to get into a couple other things like some more football. Colin Kaepernick. seventies.
The ongoing topic.
Yeah, I know, and it's kind of interesting with Andy Dalton. Going,
Yeah.
We'll have to see what's on there. All right, so first trivia question. We're talking football. What NFL team won the most games in the 1970s?
Good question.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was not the Green Bay Packers because they stunk.
They did. They had a great run in the 60s, but the 70s was not their decade.
And the Buffalo Bills, same thing.
Yeah.
So we just knocked two of those teams out.
Yep.
And I don't think the Giants were very good.
No. Nor Atlanta, nor New Orleans.
That's right.
Yeah, nor the Chargers, nor the Broncos. Broncos were good towards the end.
Towards
the end,
they were.
yeah, they were.
They were not. They
Yeah.
didn't win the most though.
Yeah.
Okay, so we already knocked off half the teams.
Yeah.
Okay, the Baltimore Ravens didn't exist.
I think it's one of three teams.
Yeah.
It's got to be one of three teams.
Okay. All right. Don't touch that dial. Sports Econ 101 is going to be right back.
That's a good question.
And it wasn't the 49ers either.
The 49ers. It's a good name for a team, though, you have to admit.
Yeah.
But Raiders just fits with Oakland, the Oakland Raiders.
Raiders.
If you say to anybody in the country, I'm from Oakland, oh, yeah, Raiders. They don't say A's. They don't say Warriors. They say Raiders.
Really?
Raiders, yeah, Raiders.
Well,
Oakland
because you don't
Raiders.
say it's Golden State Warriors.
Yeah,
That's the reason.
and,
they play in
the A's
Oakland.
have been there for a while, but the A's have never taken hold of the community the way the Raiders did.
Which even winning three World Series.
They did for a while. When they had the area to themselves, that was different. When they had the area to themselves, when the Raiders were down in LA, that was a different story.
No, but in 72, 3, and 4.
Yeah, they didn't draw a million fans those years. I think they actually did draw a million, but not much more. But in those years, you didn't need to draw that much more than a million. And tickets were cheap.
Yeah.
You paid the average ticket price was $4.50. Imagine that. $4.50 won't even get you in the parking lot now.
Now it's $450 for basketball.
Yeah.
Reading that. Who charged $100 for parking?
No, it doesn't surprise me.
Football. It was in football.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Yeah,
But
it
I
doesn't
mean,
surprise me.
what was that?
They charge 60 at Giants games for big games. I've seen it, $60 to park in the parking lots nearby. $60. That's insane. My in-laws pay about 40. They say on the average. They have a parking lot they go to, and it varies from 25 to 50, and they say it's average about 40.
I mean, you're better off just take Uber.
Yes.
Yeah. Talk about that.
Yeah.
I can hear you. Well, welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Edward Brown here along with Bruce McGowan. First trivia question. What NFL team won the most games in the 1970s?
I'm going to say it's one of three teams, either Minnesota, because they were in 4 Super Bowls in the 70s. Actually, one of them was in 69, but it was in 70, but it was after the 69 season. Dallas, which was in, I believe, 5 Super Bowls, or the Raiders. And the Raiders had probably the best. I'm going to say Dallas.
You're right.
Yeah, Dallas. Yeah. Raiders were close, though.
Yeah. I don't actually have the statistics on the numbers. It was just the
Raiders were close. They were in the playoffs, I think, 7 or 8 times that decade. So, but Dallas was in 5 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
And they only won 2 of them. They lost to the Baltimore Colts. I'm trying to think. They lost to Pittsburgh twice.
Yes. Yeah.
And then, of course, they beat Denver
and Miami Dolphins.
Miami Dolphins. Yeah.
Which is funny because if I remember, that's the lowest anybody's ever scored. I think it was 3 points.
Yeah, I think it was
3.
Yeah, it was.
And then the next year, they went undefeated.
Yeah, that's right. The Dolphins went to the Super Bowl 3 years in a row. How about that?
Oh, that's right. Then they beat Washington.
Beat Washington and then beat Minnesota. Yeah. And then the Raiders knocked them out of the playoffs in the famous Sea of Hands game.
Oh, that's
first round playoff game where Kenny Stabler was falling down and hit Clarence Davis amidst a group of defenders. That was a great play. I was sitting in the end zone watching that with my dad, and what an amazing moment.
Could you, when you look back on the tapes, how does it compare to seeing it in person? Because a lot of times in person you can't quite see everything.
Now, being there in person and seeing it play like that is special.
But I mean, really you actually like.
Oh yeah, we were in the second deck and we were right over the end zone, so we had a perfect view. And when I saw Stabler throwing the ball up, I thought, "Oh my God, he's going to throw an interception!" Because there were 3 defenders around Clarence Davis who had the worst hands. He couldn't catch. And George Atkinson used to say he couldn't catch a cold if he was standing naked at the North Pole, but he made this amazing catch, and it's still talked about to this day.
Yeah.
The sad thing is for the Raiders, they win that game. They had the best record in the league, and the next week they lose to the Steelers in the finals.
Wasn't that the Franco Harris?
No, that was a couple of years before. But the Steelers and Raiders met 5 times consecutively in the playoffs, 3 times in the AFC title game.
Well, at least the Raiders finally won one.
Finally won one.
Beat Minnesota in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Actually, the Raiders had a winning record against the Steelers if you include regular season games and playoff games in the 1970s. They won 6 and lost 5. So there you go. Great rivalry though. Not great anymore, but it was there. Yeah. That was fun.
Well, and before that, it used to be the Chiefs and the
Chiefs and the Raiders. Back in the '60s. Boy, those 2 teams hated each other.
Now, and that's the thing is I guess maybe was it a couple of plays that'll make this big. I know you're in the same division, but
it's same division. 2 teams fighting for the championship. Chiefs in '66 were champions of the AFL. Raiders were a close second, and they won in '67. The Chiefs did, and in '68 they both played each other for the Western. They had a playoff game to determine who would go to the AFL championship game. So and then '69, Chiefs were right there again. The Raiders beat them in the last day of the season. So a lot of great moments there. And then of course in '70, the famous fight where Ben Davidson speared Lenny Dawson, and everybody's going crazy. And the Chiefs had we're going to run out the clock, and they called a penalty because of the fighting. Made them go for it on 3rd down again. They didn't get the first down. Raiders got the ball back and drove down for a game-tying field goal of 48 yards by George Blanda with 3 seconds to go. And that was the beginning of George Blanda's little run of miracles. He had 5 weeks in a row, or was it 4? I think it was 4 weeks in a row where he either tied or won a game with his arm or his leg. 43 years old. That got him into the Hall of Fame. I'm convinced if he hadn't had that, he had a great career. He played till he was 48, but that's what got him into the Hall of Fame. Those great moments.
Yeah, because he started off at the Houston Oilers, I think.
Yeah, the sad thing about he started off with the Chicago Bears, but George Halas didn't like him and cut him, and he always hated George Halas. Interesting thing about George Blanda, though, was the end of his career. The Raiders were still pretty good, but they hadn't been to the Super Bowl. And the year they cut him was the year before they went to the Super Bowl, so he didn't ever get to go to a Super Bowl.
And he played for
26 years. Yeah, can you imagine that? Lived a long life, too. He lived to be, I think, 83. So he had a good life. He didn't have any bad after effects from football. He took some shots, though. Yeah. I'm sure he did. Big dude. He was about 6'2", about 220. So for those years, he was a big guy.
Yeah.
I remember going up to do an interview with him once after a game. This is when he was his final year. He goes, "What do you want?" And I said, I was kind of nervous. I said, "I just want to do an interview." He goes, "Okay, what do you want to know?" So I asked a couple of questions. And then I said, "Mr. Blanda, I have a special favor." He goes, "What is it?" And I handed him a little script I'd written. I asked him to give me a little promo for this radio show I was doing. And he goes, "Well, I can't even read this bleep and bleep writing." And he goes, "Give me that microphone." And he does a perfect take. And he throws the microphone at me. He goes, "Now, get out of here, kid. You're bothering me." And I'm walking away. And he goes, I turn around and he goes, "You're okay."
How old were you?
I was about 23. I ran into him. It was funny. I ran into him. Gosh, it must have been about 20 years later, 25 years later. He was traveling with the Raiders to some game, and I ran into him in the locker room and reminded him of that story. And he laughed and he said, "Yeah, I was an ornery SOB."
It's funny, again, as a fan, a lot of times you don't think, you just sort of think he's just a nice guy.
Well, some athletes are nice people. They're just like regular people on the street. Some are nice, some are not so nice. I can tell you stories about Kurt Gibson and Jim Rice and Eddie Murray, and these guys. Some of them were just jerks.
Well, Kurt Gibson kind of always seemed like a jerk on TV.
Something went wrong with that guy. I mean, he was a great player. Don't get me wrong, but something was wrong with him. He had a couple of screws loose.
I remember one play watching. Highlights, and he was playing for Detroit, playing third base, and there was a pop-up. He's on the foul ground, and he's looking for the ball, getting underneath it.
Kurt Gibson was playing third base, really? Yeah. Because he used to play the outfield mostly.
But this is, probably earlier in his career.
Oh, okay.
Because I think this was the year that they won the World Series in '83. I think
84.
84. Excuse me. It was more than '83. Yeah. So he's looking for the ball. I don't think it was Pinella. It was one of those two guys, but I think it was Kurt Gibson. And he bumps into the umpire because the umpire, he's supposed to get out of the way, right? Yeah. And so he bumps into him and he loses the ball.
Right.
and he goes in a tirade.
The umpire probably had no reason to throw him out either if he's pissed off at him for not moving out of the way.
He threw him out anyway because he showed him up.
Gibson was a tough SOB. He was a great player, but man, he had a what we athletes like to call the red ass. And if you got on his wrong side, which most media did, he didn't like the media at all. Better watch out. I had him, yell at me a few times in the clubhouse.
For what?
Just for being around, What are you doing down here? Because I used to go to the clubhouse early to get my interviews when there was nobody around because that was the time to talk to players. Remember, Chet Lemon was a really good guy, one of his teammates. And he started yelling at me from across the room, and I had to stop the interview. And I said, "Who?" I didn't recognize Kurt Gibson at the time. This was early in his career. I said, "Who is that guy?" And Chet Lemon kind of laughed. He goes, "Oh, that's Kurt Gibson. He's one of our younger players. He's just wanted a little tight." Tight, man. Guy's gonna have a conniption fit. Jeez, goodness.
Have you talked to Kurt since?
No. Well, no. Actually, I did when he was managing briefly with the Arizona Diamondbacks, and he was still a hard ass. Hadn't mellowed in time at all.
But he's married and got kids and stuff.
Yeah, he just doesn't like the media. Some guys just don't like the media. They look at us as like annoying, buzzing flies. Get out of my, they call us green. Some of the baseball players especially, they call us green flies. And baseball players, I think, always have a hard time with the media because we're around them probably more than their wife and kids.
Well, I was going to say that, with 162 games, that's a lot more than
it's in the heat of summer, and they're sitting around the clubhouse with nothing to do, and they're tired, and they're playing another game tomorrow, and they just finished a game the previous night. Here comes some beat writer wanting to know what happened on that 3-2 breaking pitch that you took for strike 3. They don't want to talk about it. Yeah. Or, you want to questions too. Yeah, same question. Well, yeah. I always would try to go in and ask, I'd do a feature interview because I was working for some different stations. And the athletes, once they realized I wasn't going to put them on the spot, they really, it was great. But
well, that's like here on Sports Econ 101, whenever we talk to potential guests, we always tell them, listen, we're not, quote, Jerry Springer.
Yeah.
We're always nice to our guests.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense to be that way. I think some media folks don't realize that it's better. You don't have to suck up to it. But Barry Bonds, for instance, I always got along with him well because I made an effort when he was a young player to get to know him. I knew he was going to be a great player. So I figured, okay, let's get an interview with him when he's young, a couple of interviews, get to know him a little bit. Let him know we're from the Bay Area too, because, when he come into the Bay Area, I'd always say, hey, I grew up in the Bay Area. I watched your dad play, and he always get a kick. So we always got along great, but he did not like the media. Did not like the media.
I always liked his dad.
Yeah. His dad was a hard ass, though. Once you got to know his dad and got to know him well, he was a great guy, but he had some demons.
Again, I still remember his baseball card that I have. I just think this is kind of a nice little sweet smile.
Yeah, he was not a sweet guy. The other interesting thing about him, a great power hitter, not a great average hitter, not a high average hitter. He struck out a lot. But he could run, he had speed, and he could throw, and he could do everything except for hit for average.
And did he and Mays get along pretty well?
Oh, Willie was like a father to him, and Willie and Bobby and Barry were like, it was like the father and the grandfather and the son. Yeah.
That's sweet.
Barry still, just idolizes Willie Mays, or Mays just treats him like his, special grandson.
Well, shit. Willie Mays is an idolized type. He's only the best baseball player who ever lived.
Saw him at the ballpark the other day. He's not a sweet, friendly guy like Willie McCovey, but once you get to know Willie Mays, he's 86 years old now, and he's still doing okay. His mind is sharp. He gets around. His vision's pretty much shot. He can't see.
You got to introduce me sometime.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay, here we go to our second trivia question. What NFL team has the most Super Bowl losses?
Oh, that's an easy one.
Okay, well, that's all right.
Actually, there's two of them.
Well, but no,
there's two. There's two.
Well, okay. Well, we'll have to go through this.
Yeah, we'll have to go through it.
Okay. All right.
I'm pretty sure.
you know
four losses. I'll tell you, it was 4 losses. 2 teams have 4 losses each.
Then you will tell us when we get back.
Okay.
Don't touch that down. Sports Econ 101. It's going to be right back.
Right back.
Right back.
All right.
All
right. What was that from? That's from some cartoon.
Yeah.
All right.
Jetsons.
Astro. God, isn't it funny how we remember such nonsensical stuff, but we can't remember our social security number?
No, that one I can remember.
Yeah, I can't
have to deal with it a lot.
But how do you have your social security card where you know where it is? I don't.
I
got it years ago, and I have no idea where it is.
I have it in a safe now. But yeah.
Did you get hacked by this this big thing?
Equifax?
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people.
I put an alert on there. I haven't heard. I've been the victim of identity theft before.
Yeah.
But it's funny, in the old days when you used to fill up with gas, you used to have to give your license plate number.
Right.
I still remember the license plate number.
You had to give your license plate number?
Don't you remember that?
No, I never remember doing that.
Yeah, and I don't know why.
I don't ever remember doing that. I always remember you go to the attendant and you go, I'd like $20 worth of regular, $15 worth of regular, and they do it for you.
Yeah, and also wash your windows.
And wash your windows,
check your oil.
Yeah, check your oil. Yeah.
But I remember that. So,
customer service went away first with the gas stations.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, they were the first ones to get rid of customer. Why is it, not to get off on a tangent, but why is customer service in this country so bad? And why is it, why do people put up with that,
It all comes down to money.
Yeah, but you can't even get a human being that speaks English now when you call. And that's ridiculous. I mean, how much money is it going to cost to have somebody answer your phone?
Because English people from other countries are willing to work for less.
I know, but you should want to take care of your. I guess people don't care enough to. I mean, if I get lousy customer service, I'm gone. And I call the company up and tell them exactly why.
A lot of millennials, they'll just go hop from job to job.
Oh yeah, and there's no loyalty at all. For more than 5 years in this day and age, it's impossible.
We're like.
Yeah, that's very sad. That's not a good thing for America.
No, not a good thing. It used to be the old days. You used to work for a company for years.
For your years, they take care of you.
They take care of you. But see, now they kind of don't take care of you.
They don't take care of you, no.
Every man for himself.
That's right.
It used to be, you're self-employed. That's too risky. You should work for, GM or some big company. And now it's completely opposite.
Yeah, it's better to be self-employed.
There you go. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Again, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. Easy question. What NFL team has the most Super Bowl losses?
Well, the Minnesota Vikings lost 4 in the 70s,
That's
and
correct.
the Buffalo Bills lost 4 in the 90s. So it's those 2 teams.
That's incorrect, though.
There's one on the team?
You forgot about the Patriots. They lost 4.
Oh, that's true. They did. They've lost 2
Chicago,
Bay, and then they've lost 2 with Tom Brady. He's won 5.
Yeah, that's right. And
He's won. What has he won? 4 of them, or has he won 5?
He finally won 5, or did he win 6?
I can't remember.
I
can't keep track of all their wins.
But
they're not going to win it this year, by the way.
But no,
I don't think so.
But you forgot who lost 5 Super Bowls. Come on.
Don't have a
Denver Broncos.
Oh, the Denver Broncos, of course. They won only 2. That's right.
Yeah, the first year, I guess, was with Craig Morton in 77.
So they're the team. That's the team. Okay.
86, 87, 89, and 2013.
Yeah, John Elway couldn't break through the first few times.
Yeah.
He got blistered. The Giants, the 49ers,
Yeah. Washington Redskins. Do you think he definitely solidified his Hall of Fame by winning.
Winning 2.
But if he hadn't,
I think he would have gotten in. I was at the Niners Super Bowl win when they did 55-10. I think it was the most one-sided Super Bowl. Yeah. And he threw his first pass. You could tell right from the beginning that he was spooked. He threw his first pass at a wide open receiver, threw it into the ground, and all the people in the press row upstairs were like, "Oh man, he's in for a rough day."
And seriously, when Seattle recently beat Denver,
right,
and the first score was a safety, and you said same thing. Peyton Manning, you just said he knew he was going to lose.
Yeah, but sometimes you can tell early in a game sometimes obviously the matchup favors one team, but boy,
looking at this, Colin Kaepernick to the Bengals. What do you think?
Well, I thought he was going to go to Seattle, and Seattle was kind of interested in him. They took a flyer on it, but they didn't. They didn't sign him. He's better than a lot of the backup quarterbacks. A lot of people don't want to bring him in because of the fact that he's kind of one-dimensional, and also I think one of the things about him, unfortunately, you bring along some baggage, which creates a little negative public furor. So teams are not going to bring him in until I think maybe mid-season. But I think with all the injuries in the NFL and the dearth of quarterbacks out there, I think they'll probably find a job. I'd love to see the 49ers get him back again.
That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah.
Well, so here's the interesting thing. Is reading some comments, just Yahoo Sports, and a lot of people, saying, "Don't bring that commie back in." I'll stop watching football, and everyone should boycott football.
That's no reason not to bring a guy back, and because he has unpopular political views.
Well, I
That's
wonder.
I mean, if he said something really incendiary, that would be something else. But the guy kneeled down for the national anthem, for crying out loud. That's not that big a deal.
No, that part isn't. But I think it's the other stuff. You know, wearing a Castro T-shirt. It just. I mean, it seems like it didn't just stop at the kneeling.
Well, the media made a big deal about
it. Oh yeah,
stuff.
They did. But the thing is, here's what I'm just kind of getting at on this is that, you know, I think a lot of owners, if they look and they go, you know, are people going to boycott our team? I mean,
well,
how much is this going to cost us?
That's a good point. That's a good point. I think a lot of owners are afraid. Most pro football owners are conservative politically, but that's beside the point. I think they're looking at the bottom line.
Yeah.
If Colin Kaepernick was going to bring in dollars for bring in more fans, they'd sign him in a heartbeat.
Exactly.
But
I don't think that the teammates would give him a hard time.
No,
some people have supported.
Yeah.
And some of the players are doing what he did.
Well, 78% of the league is African American, and a lot of African Americans support it. Some don't, but you know.
But some people are already do the kneeling and all that kind of stuff.
Marshawn Lynch, you know, the Raiders does his little thing, but he doesn't explain why he does it. He did an interview the other day after the game, and the mics got too close. He goes, "Get those mics out of my face!" He like pushed them away.
But did he do more than just? Yeah.
No, he actually talked a little bit, but it wasn't. There was nothing very revealing. Okay. And I think it was because it was the home opener. You know, he wanted to.
But some of the, you know, so there's other players who are kneeling for, you know, the same reason, but they're not getting the same, you know.
Well, he was the first one. Yeah.
So, of course, you remember this. You know, Muhammad Ali. Right. He changed his name from Cassius Clay.
Right.
He goes against the Vietnam War. He actually gets thrown in jail because of it.
Well, they didn't actually throw him in jail, but they threatened.
They threatened.
They took his boxing
license, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Took 3 years out of his life. You know.
Gee, kind of an important time.
Yeah. Highlight of his career. You know, the height of his career.
Yeah, after the Olympics. And all. So then, you know, if you think about it, you know, he was definitely a politicized figure.
Yeah.
But look what ended up happening with him.
Yeah, he becomes an iconic figure. I don't think Colin Kaepernick, unfortunately for him, is going to be that kind of guy. Because he's not, you know, if he won a Super Bowl, you know, maybe, who knows. He's an interesting character. He's an interesting player. Last year, you look at his numbers, he had 16 touchdowns, threw 4 interceptions, won the Eshmont Award, which is given to the 49er player who is voted by his teammates as the, you know, the most inspirational player. So he wasn't a distraction. But I think the 49ers with a new coach and a new general manager wanted to go in a different direction. I'd say that Brian Hoyer can do better than that. Yeah. No disrespect to Brian Hoyer. That, you know, he's in the pros and he's an NFL player, but he's average at best. Yeah. You know, it's like having Josh McCown out there.
Yeah. I mean, I'll bet if Colin Kaepernick got his haircut though and looked a little bit more like he used to, that would probably help.
Well, you know, it's funny. He now is more talkative than ever. He's more likable and talkative to the media. Before, you know, he'd give you these monosyllabic answers, and a lot of it was because Jim Harbaugh said, "Don't trust the media." Yeah. Harbaugh schooled it, you know, and as soon as Harbaugh left, he opened up and became much more.
But he's got to get rid of the Coco Crisp haircut.
Coco Crisp haircut. I don't know if he still has it. He may
or Oscar Gamble.
Right. I don't know what he's doing these days. You know, he's probably involved in, you know, whatever he's involved with, but he's not trying out with anybody. But I guarantee you, somebody will take a flyer on him and bring him in for a tryout.
They get desperate enough.
Sure, because teams are shorthanded. There's only 32 teams. There's 64 quarterbacks, including the backups. And, you know, if you want to include your third string, I mean, he's good enough to play as a backup. There's no question. He's better than half the backups out there. Anyway.
Okay, so moving on to, I don't know if you saw this photo on Yahoo Sports. You have to check it out. So these 5 kids, they post a photo of them wearing white hoods like the KKK, burning a cross and holding a Confederate flag. And the media, you know, obviously picks it up, and they end up getting kicked. It turns out they're football players. They get kicked off.
High school players.
High school football players. They get kicked off the team.
Yeah.
Not out of school.
Right.
And so it's really kind of interesting. You know, some people were kind of going, okay, well, you know, First Amendment rights. Other people, you know, hate speech. Which, by the way, apparently the Supreme Court has never. There is no such thing as hate speech. You know, from a legal standpoint.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah, you can say whatever you want.
Say whatever you want.
Yeah.
Right. And I thought, actually, looking at some of these reactions from people who wrote in, I thought this was really kind of interesting. Okay, so this one guy says, "I'm black and I want people to exercise their freedom of speech, expression, even if they burn crosses. I just want them to do it without the hood so we know who they are.
Good point.
Okay.
Yeah, I think anybody who hides behind a hood or a mask is a coward.
Yeah, it's like, well, ISIS does that too.
Oh yeah, well, and these guys that show up, these anarchists that show up at rallies,
yes,
the
exactly.
extreme left, they're just.
One other thing I thought was really kind of cool was the student, one of the students, excuse me, whose son was in the photo.
Right.
Hand delivered a note to the newspaper, sincerely apologizing for the strife that's caused the community. It says, in no way reflects the family values. Our family has strong beliefs that all individuals are created equal in God's eyes. And they also supported the decision to remove their son from the football team.
Interesting. What kind of, I don't mean to knock the parents, but I would have to say, a kid does that, where do they learn that kind of behavior?
It could be just getting attention.
Maybe it's getting attention. But I mean, either way, either whether it's racist or whether they learn at home or whether they're getting, something is going, I mean, the parents without knowing all the information, but at the same time, when your kid does that, you're not on top of it enough to know that your kid is doing that kind of stuff.
But I appreciate the parents finally stepping in and doing some real discipline.
That's good. It's kind of like, the horse is out of the barn, though.
True. And hopefully the kid will learn and change from it.
I mean, they're young kids, so what, 17 or 18 years old.
Yeah,
so.
exactly.
Yeah.
But also, it's interesting because, on the one hand, you say, okay, freedom of speech and, freedom of expression. But, football players get fined for doing, professional football players get their pay cut and suspensions for doing, like here, Ezekiel Elliott potentially, getting the fine and the suspension because of something that has nothing to do with football.
Right.
And so here are these kids, they're also going to be held to a standard that says, hey, listen, you got to support our team, its motto, basically, that we're not into this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I sort of appreciated the fact of being kicked off the team, but not out of school.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, they shouldn't be kicked out of school. That's a little extreme. But yeah, I mean, it's a fine line between saying something that's really on your mind and your heart and saying something that's just destructive and negative and hateful.
And here's one of the things is that because it wasn't specifically targeted, like in fact, one of the quarterback is black, but they weren't targeting any specific person.
I wonder how he felt about that.
He said he was disappointed.
Disappointed, you think?
Yeah.
Geez, my teammates are walking around with hoods and Confederate flags.
And the funny thing is, I don't even know how many of these guys know their history enough.
I hate to say it. This is going to sound really negative, but a lot of people today, a lot of young people today, are ignorant of their own country's history, just the basics. You ask somebody to explain what Gettysburg was, or the Gettysburg Address, or the battleship Maine, or the Great Depression. A lot of people, what? Yeah, but of course they can tell you what Jay-Z said last week. I mean, it's the instant information age. We're only interested in what's going on now. Boom, 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 boom.
And how many people know what a score is? When you say 4 score?
Well, and also, hey, there's that term. I didn't realize this, but that's a term. That's a criminal term for taking down. Like if you go in and steal money out of a bank, you're taking down scores. I didn't realize that until recently.
Huh. But 4 score in 7 years ago.
4 score. Well, a score is
20 years.
Yeah, 20 years. Yeah. A score is 20 years. Yeah.
That's how you can remember that 1863 was Gettysburg Address. 4 score and 7, and you go back to 1870 or 1776 and add 83 years. And there you go.
Yeah. It's interesting that not to get off on a tangent about that, but Lincoln spoke for about, I think, 3 minutes, and he could barely be heard. He didn't have a real strong voice. He kind of had a high, thin, rainy voice.
Is that right?
Yeah, so they said. There was in those days, they had what were called orators who had these big, booming, stentorian voices, and they had a guy who was probably the most famous of his time named Edward Everett Jones, I believe. And he spoke for an hour and a half and gave this incredible speech. And then afterwards, after Lincoln spoke, he said, I only wish I had been able to consolidate my words into, the minute and a half that you gave it, because your point was much more well taken than what I said.
Well, I like what he said, too. I think it was Stephen Douglas when they were doing a debate, and Stephen Douglas accused him of being two-faced, and Lincoln said, if I was two-faced, you think I'd be wearing this one? He was not quite the attractive man.
No, he wasn't, yeah.
That's why he grew.
And you ever look at pictures of Lincoln before He became president after, towards the end. I mean, the awesome duties and responsibilities of the presidency just wear you down. Look at the presidents. Look at the guys today. The only guy who, you know, he looks old because he is old is Jimmy Carter. Oh, yeah, he was only in office 4 years. But look at Clinton. Look at the Bushes.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at even Obama. Yeah. Yeah, he looks tired.
All right, so here's our third trivia question. What player holds the record, talking football here, for the most interceptions returned for a touchdown in a single Super Bowl game?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
What player holds the record for the most interceptions returned for a touchdown in a single Super Bowl game? Don't touch that dial. Sports Econ 101 is going to be right back.
Got to be somebody who did it twice, but I can't think of anywhere off the top of the head. I should know that.
The answer is twice.
Yeah,
that's part of it. Yes.
Yeah, but who would it be? I mean, I can name you a bunch of guys that did run them back, but the one I always remember was Willie Brown, because I was there and I was in the end zone. I was waiting, and I'd gone down to the field for the post-game interviews, and Willie comes literally running right. I got a perfect view. He's running right towards me, and he ran. I kind of veered off maybe 5 feet in front of me. It was just such a thrill to see him running with the ball, and you could see his eyes like this.
Old man Willie.
Old man Willie. He had some big interceptions and returns for touchdowns in the playoffs. He did that several times. Turned two playoff games in 70 and 73 with intercepted passes for touchdowns. Yeah, what he was good at doing was he would tip the ball. He wouldn't grab it. He would tip it up in the air, and then he'd tip it, and then he'd catch it. He had a way of doing that.
I guess everybody expects you to just grab it.
Yeah. It's interesting. Gary and Conley did that last week, the rookie of the Raiders. He made a great play. The receiver was backpedaling near the sidelines, and the ball was up high. He was going to make this great catch, and Conley reached up at the last minute, went like this with his hand like a volleyball, and just tipped it away. And he said, no, he almost tipped it to a teammate, and he said afterwards, he said, I was trying to tip it to my teammate. Yeah, but it was kind of cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Here we go. Well, welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. Third and final trivia question about football. What player holds the record for the most interceptions returned for a touchdown in a single Super Bowl game?
Well, it's got to be two, but I should know this.
The answer's two. That's funny because I was thinking.
Was it fairly recent? Last 20.
In the last 70 years. No,
last 20 years?
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny because I was thinking, oh, well, wait a minute, that's Howard. But I go, no, that was.
It's got to be in a blowout. One of the blowout games.
Let's put it this way: you were not happy about the Super Bowl.
I wasn't happy about the Super Bowl.
Not happy about the Super Bowl.
Me personally.
Me personally.
Oh, you know who it was? It was against the Raiders, Tampa, and I think it was. Was it John Lynch? No,
Dwight Smith.
Dwight Smith.
Yeah,
wow.
I don't remember him personally, but I was very disappointed with that Bucs
game myself. What hurt the Raiders then was Barrett Robbins, their All-Pro center, had a substance abuse problem. He went AWOL the night before the game. Showed up for the team meeting in the breakfast room and was hungover or on drugs or whatever, and they couldn't play him.
Was just the pressure gets to you at that point?
I don't know. He had been on the straight and narrow for so long. He was a really good guy, but he had this substance abuse problem. Boy, you talk about a guy that went downhill from that point on, and then he straightened his life out. And from what I understand, he's doing very well now. Which now
he's too old to play football.
Too old to play football.
Okay, here we go. We're going to cut out. Here's our thoughts for the day.
Thoughts for the day.
Okay, you're going to like this.
All right.
Falling down is how we grow. Is how we die.
That's a good one. I like that. Who said that?
I just said it now, but I don't know.
You said it. Yeah, you said it. I like that.
And Milton Berle said this one: if opportunity doesn't knock, build a door.
I like that.
I like that. That's a fun Milton Berle. I used to love that show when I was a kid.
You remember the Milton Berle show?
Of course I do.
That was back in the 50s.
Well, I don't remember that. I wasn't born then, but I remember the 60s.
Did he keep it going? I never watched that show. I like Milton Berle. No, I never watched Jackie Gleason's show. I didn't watch those variety shows.
Really?
Never did.
It's all been fun. Tune in next week to Sports Econ 101. We're going to be discussing sports topics from a business perspective and asking more sports trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm your host, Edward Brown. We'll see you next week.
Good night, America.
So long.
Our team, you and me.
You and me.
The You and
That's
Me
right.
Show. It's the You and Me Show.